Hi, everybody. Welcome back from a long winter's nap. This is Paul Zwaska, and this is the Inside Edge Podcast. A podcast all about maintaining ball fields at the lower levels, the youth leagues, the park and recs, schools, all those kind of things. We give you tips and pointers on maintaining your ball fields, dealing with budgeting, all kinds of things that are involved in maintaining and renovating and building ball fields. Today, we're going to start off where we left off last fall in our last show in November. If you recall, if you were with us, we were dealing with the end-of-season checklist on closing down your ball field. Today, we're going to open her back up with a new checklist for opening up for the spring. And you can get this checklist if you look at the description of the podcast today. You'll see a link there. You can click on that to get this checklist. Also, you can go to the maintenance tips page of our website at duredge.com, and you'll find the maintenance tips there where you can download that as well, print it off and give it to your friends or post it around the ballpark to keep track of all the things you have to do to get ready. So with me today is going to be my partner in crime, the man who went through the end-of-season checklist with me in the fall. And he's back with us again this season, and he's going to work with us on this spring checklist, Mr. Tom Burns, former Major League head groundskeeper for the Texas Rangers. Tom, welcome aboard, and good to have you back for another season.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. I enjoy our little chats here.
Well,
and
frankly,
hopefully
neither of us
can
have
help
anything.
People out.
Neither of us have anything else to do, so what the heck? So it is what it is.
Like I always say, if we don't know the answer, we'll just make something up, and we're the experts, so nobody will know the difference.
That's right, exactly. So I mean, we've had a heck of a winter this year, especially in the Northeast. They've been getting killed all winter long, and they just got nailed again the other day. And they're probably going to be in winter for about another month or so. A lot of cold air still yet to come down through their neck of the woods. But for instance, Tom's down in Texas, and he's been warming up there playing ball down there, right, Tom?
Yeah, we had a pretty mild winter this year until the day after the SFMA conference. We had a huge winter storm come through the center of the country. Ice storm. We had here. We got off pretty easy compared to like Tennessee. Kentucky,
Mississippi
parts of Mississippi,
yeah,
Arkansas. We got about 2 inches of sleet. Other places got up to 6-8 inches of ice.
Yeah.
Which
Oklahoma
brings
got
about
slammed
different
with
problems.
heavy snow in that storm,
heavy
as well
snow,
as other
heavy
areas
ice,
north and east.
very cold temperatures. So now we are getting out of that, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think this may end up being kind of a false spring, which we get here every once in a while. So, I mean, when I was with the Rangers, we went through actually into the middle of, I think it was the beginning of April, one year where we went down to 18 degrees. So you never know what is coming. But basically, things are starting to bud out. There probably will be a few more cold snaps. Hopefully it's nothing as severe as that.
First of all, I should explain to people, Tom mentioned the SFMA conference. That is the Sports Field Managers Association conference that Tom was talking about. That takes place usually about the third week of January. And this year was down actually literally in Tom's backyard in Dallas-Fort Worth. And unfortunately, I didn't make it down this year for some strange reasons, but Tom tells me it was a good show. And
it was a very good show.
That's probably because I wasn't there. So, hey, everything worked out great. But actually, Tom, I think you're going to be all right down there. Things are going to be pretty warm down there and warming up. I think you're out of the winter, the clutches of winter. It's the Northeast that's really got to worry about it, and a little bit north central part of the country. So that'll be good. But you talk about that story from the Rangers. I remember one year it was after we had moved over to Oriole Park, and 2 weeks before opening day, I think it was 2 weeks. It was really close to opening day. We ended up getting 16 inches of snow And I was like, oh crap, I don't want to have to plow all this off or anything. I'd already turned on the irrigation system, and of course we had a sand-based field with the PAT system back at that time, which could actually suck water out of the field. And so I started running the irrigation to flush the snow off the field. And the warehouse in right field has the Oriole offices, and of course a lot of the offices face over the field, and of course, so they look at this and they go, "What the hell is he doing now?"
What are you doing?
So we used the irrigation to help flush the snow as fast as possible off the field, and it took us about a week to get rid of all that snow. So thankfully we got ready, with about a week left before opening day. But when you get situations like that, it's kind of scary now. Up farther north up here and like Wrigley and Comiskey Park and some of those places up in Minnesota, they've got to worry about snow falling on their fields close to opening day and during opening day week. But anyhow, we digress.
Now that you mentioned that, Mark Rasm in Colorado Rockies told me that April is actually their snowiest month.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
it's different parts of the country. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, they get a lot of that upsloping on the eastern side of the Rockies there in that time of the year, and that helps produce that snow in that area. So I'm sure he's always waiting with bated breath to get through with that month without having to have to deal with anything. So, but like Tom says, you just never know what Mother Nature's going to throw at you. So because of that, you're always preparing as a groundskeeper. I'm never thinking as much about today when I'm on a field as I am what's going to happen over the next 7 days, what's going to happen over the next 10 days. So, we're always watching, at least I'm always, but I'm also a weather nerd, but I'm always watching the weather farther out and doing all my planning way in advance to make sure that we're always ready. And that's something we have to do at the major league levels. There's no such thing as you can't go to the owner and say, gee, I'm sorry, we're not ready yet. That just doesn't cut it. Because the next
Season
thing
snuck up on you.
Yeah. Nobody told me we were starting in April this year.
Yeah.
So there's no excuses, and that's really the way you should be planning when you're doing these, taking care of these recreational fields. So let's start out, Tom, with the spring checklist, and we're going to start out like we did with the fall, and talk about some of the accoutrements surrounding the field, the what we call the verticals. Field fencing and netting and padding and that kind of stuff. And, there were things on the fall checklist that you did to make sure that those things were either removed so they didn't get beat up by the wind over the winter time, or they were re-secured to make sure they weren't going to flap around and get beat up by the wind, because your strongest winds come during the winter and early spring months. So you want to protect those items because they're expensive. So the first thing you're going to do is inspect the facility for any winter damage from snow, ice. Ice is nasty when it comes to batting cage nets, backstop nets, which if you've got a backstop, that's a net backstop, and you can drop that thing in the wintertime, and you're in that central part of the country, that strip of the central part of the country that is more prone to ice. Man, I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to drop that thing in the fall and not have to worry about it and just hoist it back up in the spring once the winter's over, than to get caught with an ice storm and hope that it doesn't tear, or worse yet, I've seen them bring down the posts. As strong as those posts are, you get a lot of weight on those things, and you combine ice and wind. And we used to have, back in the days when I used to work with another company, we had a lot of pictures that were sent to us about their batting cages that had caved in. Tom, you got anything to add on that, or?
Yeah, tarps. Looking at if you've got a field tarp, full field tarp. Generally we, just roll it up and it's sitting on the edge of the field there. What I like to do with mine in the fall was open it up, get it all cleaned up, make sure it's really dry, and then I would roll it up actually on blocks to get it up off the ground. If you can, open that tarp up, check it out. Mildew,
It's one of the
cats,
stinkiest unrolls of the year.
Oh yeah, cats and rats and raccoons love to get in there and make some nests over the winter. Stay out of the wind.
Chew holes.
Yeah, chew holes in them. So don't be surprised. You got to cover your field and you pull it out there and you got a big old hole in it. It really makes sense to open it up, check it out. You're talking about the windscreens, backstops. If you're using cable ties, freeze and thaw and desiccation on those things, they get really brittle in the winter. They get snap off.
Yep.
So just check those out. Padding, same thing. Anything like that. Just, take a walk around and check things out. Safety is, really important. Number one, somebody doesn't get hit by a baseball. Number two, you don't create a dangerous environment for your players.
Yeah.
Fencing, if you're using like chain link fences and stuff, if you had a lot of rain or snow melt or something, make sure that the bottom, you don't have a gap at the bottom. Somebody catch your ankle in it. Just things like that.
Or let a ball go through.
Yeah, or a ball go through. Yes.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to touch on with windscreen, when you're reinstalling that for the spring, if you've taken it down during the winter, which I usually recommend if at all possible, especially if it has advertising on, because those are more costly windscreens to purchase. If you put them back up, or if you're just resecuring what's currently in place, one recommendation that we always used to make was along the bottom part of the windscreen that's closest to the ground, you use your strongest cables, your cable ties, okay, zip ties, whatever you want to call them. And then up the sides and across the top, you're going to use a slightly weaker zip tie. And there's a good reason for all that, because you want some type of emergency release when you get into strong thunderstorms and things like that with strong winds, so that if it gets to the point where there's enough torque there and it starts busting your cable ties, what you don't want is that windscreen caught up on top and it's flapping along like this, because it'll destroy that windscreen. Where if you've got your strongest zip ties at the bottom, it'll break the top and sides and just lay that down on the ground, and you don't get the damage of those windscreens from those strong winds. Whereas if it, the last thing you want is that windscreen flapping, because that's when all the damage goes. It can get caught on the fence on the top where you've got the little crosses. If you don't have fence cap on there, it can catch on anything, and it starts fraying, and after that it rapidly deteriorates. So just a little tip there on securing your windscreen.
We also in Florida had a big thunderstorm come through with straight line winds, and actually the windscreen knocked the fence over and bent. Yep. Schedule 40 pipes like down to the ground.
Yeah.
So it depends on which way the wind's coming from. Obviously, if it's coming towards the windscreen, it's still going to probably knock it over.
Yep.
But if it's coming the other way, hopefully it'll break the windscreen loose of the fence and save the fence. So that's a good idea.
Another key is that, well, first of all, two things here. One is when you do put up windscreen on a fence, you really should check with your local fence contractor to make sure that fence is built to handle that kind of wind load, because you're adding a tremendous amount of wind load by putting that chain link or that windscreen on that chain link. And you can put all little smiley faces cut into the windscreen that you want. You're not reducing any of the wind load for the most part at all by doing that. But there's a tremendous amount of force there. And, if the fence contractor knows that you're going to be putting or windscreen on there, fencing contractor, yeah. They'll adjust post spacings and everything, and the thickness of pipe and that kind of stuff, knowing the kind of wind load you have on there. So what Tom mentioned isn't going to happen, or it's the chances of it happening are greatly reduced, because
lesser, yes.
Yeah, because you get some, especially up here in the Midwest, when you get some of these storms rolling across or a derecho coming through. I mean, you're not going to be able to stop what those things can do. I mean, those things will take down a corn crib, for crying out loud. But the majority of thunderstorms, you want to be able to try and get through that. And most of the time, these ball fields are out in the wide open, so there's not a lot of friction along the ground to slow the winds down. Inspect your netting, as we talked about. One of the things that you should also be looking at is, especially along batting cages, if you left them out, or if you've got backstops where the net goes all the way to the ground, which I strongly urge you never to do. And it's for this reason: rabbits love to chew on the netting, and mice, especially during the wintertime. So that's why I always say take the batting cages down for the wintertime. Batting cages, backstops. We always recommend a 3-foot knee wall of some type. It doesn't have to be a brick wall. It could be some type of other manufactured wall. But try to avoid bringing your backstop nets all the way down to the ground. Backstop nets are expensive. You got to go all the way up. And if you get all the holes down at the bottom, you got to buy an entirely new net when, 95% of it's still in good shape. So always try to put a knee wall and avoid putting your netting all the way to the ground on the backstop. Padding, another great home for mice and other rodents to chew into and make a home in the wintertime in the foam. So, you can take the pads down if they're simple backstop pads, stuff like that. That's not a big deal. But if you had a park where the wall pads are surrounding your entire ballpark, I wouldn't expect you to take your wall pads down. We used to do that actually at Old Memorial Stadium. And they were taken in during the wintertime and then put back up in the spring. Oriole Park, we always left them up. We would take them down during the fall and clean behind them, but otherwise we put them right back up. I'm sure the same thing with you, Tom. You guys never took yours down, did you?
No, there was some areas where it kind of made sense to do it. They're small pads, didn't take up a whole lot of room, and that's the big problem is really storing them. You don't have enough. Most places don't have enough room to store them.
Exactly.
Do a little preventative maintenance on them. Keep them clean. Keep the peanut shells and things like that from the backside of them. Get all that stuff cleaned out, and
because those will hold moisture. Those will hold moisture, and that'll start the rot. So that's why you have to be, you have to be diligent at least once a year. Take those off and clean behind them, and preferably, the end of the season is the best time to do that, so it's not sitting back there all winter long and starting to decay. The other thing is, if you've got fence cap, start walking around those fields and checking for brittleness. That plastic over time, the UV inhibitors break down over time, and you'll start to get the fence cap starting to crack and break off, and that's the time to take that off and replace it. But that's about it from the verticals from my point. Tom, if you don't have anything left to add, we'll move on. Otherwise, if you got something.
I think I pretty much covered it, and I think just the big thing is, when in doubt, just check it out. It doesn't take that long to walk around the field. Take a little checklist with you, and just, little preventative maintenance on a periodic schedule, just will save a lot of heartache.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be discovering these problems partway into the season. It's a lot easier when nothing's going on to get this stuff done. Well, let's jump onto the field, and we're going to jump onto the field starting up in the north here, because obviously up in the northern part of the country, we've got a little thing called frost and snow and all that kind of stuff to deal with. So it's been quite a long time since Tom's had to deal with that, going way back to his days with Cleveland back in, what was that, the 1940s, was it?
Yeah.
What years were you there at Cleveland?
78 to 83.
Ah, those were good years. Those are my college years.
Yeah.
So, the first thing, and when I used to work at my previous employer, we would get phone calls from groundskeepers all the time saying, "Hey, the coach wants to get on the field, and and it's still frozen. He thinks it's dry, but it's frozen." and I tell him, I'd tell him, I said, "Well, send him back out at about 2:00 in the afternoon. It looks great first thing in the morning when it's frozen. It looks like it's dried and ready to play on. You go back out there at 2 o'clock, it's a quagmire because, the water on top thaws out and it gets all mushy because the water can't go anywhere. It can't go down, and whatever can run off has run off already. And he'll go about ankle deep in the mud.
Yeah.
But the coaches, I understand they want to get out and play, but they have to let Mother Nature, do her thing. And so you have to stay off these infields until all the frost is gone. And you'll know when it's gone, because as soon as that frost is gone on the ground, that water that's stuck up in the profile of the infield dirt, that'll fly through that soil very quickly. And you get one good, March day of wind, or April, depending on how far north you are. One good dry wind, and in a matter of a day, that infield totally turns around. And once that happens, as soon as you get rid of the frost and it's dry enough that you can get equipment on there without sinking in too much, that's the time to go out and roll that infield, roll the skinned areas, and get those rolled in usually I tell people 2 directions that are perpendicular, to get that re-solidified. That way, if you get any rain, the water's going to run off like it's supposed to, because over the course of the wintertime, you get the natural freeze-thaw cycle. And what that does is that adds pore space back into the soil. It's Mother Nature's way of aerifying up here in the north. So it's opened up all this pore space. So now you got all these, all these areas filled with air in the soil. So as soon as it rains, those pores fill up with water, and it's holding water. So we want to get rid of that so that infield dirt drains real quickly. So that's why rolling is so important on the infield skin, baselines, home plate area, mound. Get all those things rolled, and that way you can A, allow them to start practicing on it, and B, you can start working on it. Another problem that we have up here in the north is with our home plates. If you've got the waffle bottom home plates on your fields, or any type of home plate that's hollow underneath, you're going to get frost heave that's going to push up the corners of that home plate and literally make it a dish. It's going to hold water because the sides are going to get forced up, and it becomes like a giant cup. Sometimes that'll go back down once the frost is out of ground and you can roll it. But most of the time, it permanently deforms that home plate. You'll lose some of the cuppiness, but you'll never lose it all. And it holds water and that kind of stuff. So you may have to change out that home plate. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion that when you do go and put a new home plate in to replace that, go with, and this is a rarity, but I'm gonna push this brand, the Bulldog home plates. They're solid rubber, 40 pounds of solid rubber. They're 2-sided home plate, so when the top gets so abused, and it takes a long time because they use really good quality rubber with it, you can flip it over and use it again. At the Little League fields that I was involved with, I put one in, and there's actually a video of it on the internet when I installed that. And I think it was in there it must have been close to 8 years before I left being involved with it. And we still hadn't even flipped it over yet. It was in that good a shape. And the frost is just not going to affect that kind of thing. So something you might want to think about, because frost can do some damage to a home plate area. You don't see it as much with a pitching rubber. It can cause it to bubble, cause a pitching rubber to bubble. And if that's the case, again, if you go to the Bulldogs, they're a much thicker rubber on those pitching rubbers, and you won't see that kind of a problem building up with that.
Paul, there's actually another product out that's almost like it's a steel plate with edges on it that form a form that you can drop your home plate onto, where you can put those in concrete, and then if you're pulling out that plate, makes it a lot easier to put back in place. So that's something, you can do some research on that on the internet, and that's something that a couple groundskeepers got together and started making some things that just make it easier for us to do our jobs anymore.
Yeah, is that fairly new?
You might want to check that out. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. Last few years.
Okay.
So you can look it up. Even if you're using a bulldog, this is a good idea. And actually, if you want me to tell you the name of it, it's Turf Shed Tools. Look them up on the internet because it makes it a lot easier to get your plate back in the right spot.
Turf Shed
Because
Tools.
it's
Is that
formed,
Chad's?
and you just put it in. Yeah,
Is that Chad's?
yeah,
Chad
yeah.
Mulholland's company.
yeah, yeah. So that's it's a good idea to do. And they have the same thing for the pitching rubber too.
Yeah.
So you may want to check it out.
All right. Let's see. I'm just checking my notes here. I think that pretty well covers, things that are unique to the northern part of the country.
And as you're talking about that, Paul, like you're talking about, rolling the pitching mound, rolling the home plate, even in the transition zone and down south. If you went in the fall and you renovated those areas, and let's say you put your tarp on the mound, you kept it covered all year, don't expect to take that tarp off and play ball the first day. You need to take that tarp off because even though you had it covered, you're going to lose moisture. You're going to probably get some cracking in that clay. So what you need to do is you need to open up that mound, check out your tarp, make sure that, you haven't gotten any holes in it over the winter time. Go in and, check your measurements, and do some preventative maintenance and some preparation, get your hydration back in there, give it a good compaction, and the top dressing, put back on it. So don't just trust that, hey, I did this in the fall, I don't have to do anything to it. We can go right back out there. Same thing on your bullpens. You've if you did it in the fall, you've accelerated the process so you don't have to do so much work in the springtime, but it's not a foolproof deal. You still have to go out there and do some preparatory maintenance on it.
And a lot of that, Tom, depends on how soon that field's going to get played on, too. Like, for instance, when we talked about last November when we did the end-of-season checklist, we talked about, after the season was over, renovating your mound and home plate and getting it ready for the following season. Now, I didn't do that the Little League, and the reason I didn't is because I had time. We weren't butt up against, we're not a high school or a college that had to be playing right away at the end of February and in early March. Then you don't have any time.
Exactly.
But we waited till spring, and the reason that is because, at the end of the season, that mound and home plate area are rock hard. Because they don't always get the moisture they need, so they get baked and get really tight. So we'd wait till the spring because what would happen is, first of all, we left our home plate open during the winter time to allow moisture to get into the home plate area. We didn't do it with the mound, again, because it's a mound, and if you get rain, you don't want stuff washing away. But the freeze-thaw cycle did a really great job of loosening up that top inch and a half of the mound. And so we could go in there and scrape that, especially the front mound slope where the clay is, get that down to virgin clay that hadn't been touched by the players. And we'd be able to get rid of the clay on that top inch that was contaminated with top dressing and stuff like that. Might not be binding as well as it did when it was fresh clay. So we would come in and just shave all that top portion off. And it came off super simple because, again, the frost did all the work for you. We'd come in, put on a new layer of clay on the top, get the slope to where it needed to be, and then we'd do our rolling. So that's a benefit. If you have the time in the north, do that in the spring instead of in the fall. But for, again, for high schools and colleges, it's just going to be really hard because they are on it the minute they can get on there.
Yeah, and the high schools here are playing already. They start in January. The colleges are playing already. Down in certain areas, down in Texas here, Florida, California, Arizona, along the Gulf Coast, they never stop playing ball. They may have a couple week break here and there, but then they're out on those fields. So there's a little wiggle room here. Not everybody falls into the same category. So
that's why it's much better to be a groundskeeper. That's why it's much better to be a groundskeeper in the north because we get an off season.
Yeah. Well,
You can have your sunshine and warmth. You know, you can have that. I'll take the time off.
Okay.
All right.
So the other thing, I think the other thing is, if we're talking about the mound and the plate, base anchors, check your base anchors, make sure they haven't moved.
More
make sure
importantly,
they
that they're not
settled
rusted.
too much. Yeah, they're not rusted. Your bases fit in and out easily. Little things like that. Your measurements of, we're going back out and re-edging and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times when I've gone onto a field, recreational level fields, and I've come across, some of these base anchors that, there was one I remember that, it's just a 1.5 by 1.5 square anchor, and one whole side of it had rusted and busted away and was bent out some. And I'm like, I can't believe they still got this one in the ground. I mean, you're opening yourself up. You're opening yourself up to a potential bad situation, not only for a player but possibly for your organization. Because if a player gets hurt, you could be sued for that if you're not taking care of that base anchor and replacing it if it's showing sign of wear or damage. So it's always good to at least once a year, preferably first thing. Excuse me. Let's edit that out, Zach. Let's go back and let me redo that. A little bit of lunch came up.
Oh, there you go.
Hang on, I gotta wash that down. I can't believe you didn't. To be honest with you.
Hey, at least we couldn't smell it.
Yeah. It didn't come out that side. It didn't come out that side. It was a regurgitation. All right, I'm gonna start up again at. I'll start that story over again about the base anchor. I remember one time when I was going on to a recreational field right after the winter, and the base anchors are typically a 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch square. And I was looking down at the anchor, and 3 sides of the anchor were intact, but the 4th side was just kind of bent out. And the 2 corners had rusted out down the corners, so that one piece was a flap sticking out. And so, that can be a potential problem, not just for the player, but also for the organization. Because if that player gets hurt, there's a chance that they're gonna sue you if that anchor was in a bad way. So it's always important to at least go out and check those anchors once a year, preferably at the beginning of the season before games start on the year for that. So, yeah. And again, the other thing, Tom, of course, is it's important up here to check them because you never know if you had a really deep frost that year, they could move. So you want to make sure that they're in the right place and solidified again. So, but the rolling will help a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned a little earlier, if you didn't have your home plate tarped, once that infield has been rolled and everything, and you got everything in shape, it's time to start protecting that home plate again and managing that moisture. So you're going to want to deploy those tarps on the mound. Hopefully you left it on all winter for the mound, but certainly on the home plate area. If you did have your mound open, you're probably going to have a little bit of work, pulling some material back up out of the grass, or as best you can, and get that tarp in place so we're not going to wash any more of that out with the heavy rains. Something that commonly happens on recreational fields, that they'll play on them in the spring and into the early summer, and then that might be the end of their year. They won't do anything in the fall on there. So in which case those fields may not be managed. They probably not going to send somebody out, even though they should, once a week and drag those fields. So weeds start coming up on your fields. So before you do any more work on the infield skin, you're going to want to get out there and get the weeds out of those fields. You can do it chemically, but really you really need to do more than that, because you need to get the actual physical part of the weed out of there so it's out of your way. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is either with a sod cutter, or if you've got an infield groomer that has profiler blades, which are blades that can go down, into the soil a little ways. They kind of form like how would you call them? They look like a V, I guess.
Yeah.
And they'll go down just below. You can set them down so that they'll go, maybe a half inch down or whatever, and just go along and cut those things off at the roots, and then you guys can rake those out. And obviously you don't have any problem with Bermuda moving down south in the wintertime, right?
Not in the wintertime, but you get a lot of, grassy weeds. Broadleaf, you can get broadleaf weeds. If you've overseeded your field, you're always going to get some ryegrass.
Oh yeah.
That's going to come
absolutely.
up on the edges. If you got a heavy rain after you overseeded, it could have washed down to your skin. You don't notice it. Then over the wintertime, it sits there. When it starts to warm up, it'll pop up like crazy. So you do get weeds in there. The best thing to do, like you said, is, once in a while go out there and drag it. There's always going to be some kind of a problem like that. But just, usually it's minimal on these fields if they're used. Now, if they sit fallow for a long period of time, yes, you're going to have a weed problem.
Yeah. So if you don't touch them from, August 1st on, you're going to have weeds come next spring.
Yeah, so it's a good idea, to just go out there. Even if it's every couple weeks or something like that, and get those weeds, loosen them up as they start popping up. Always easier when they're young and just coming up, just emerging, to get rid of them than letting them get too big. Then they get a big root mass under them, and it can be a big problem.
Yeah. And once the weeds are removed, you can start to check for low spots of that infield. Now, if you've been watching that infield all late winter and early spring, you might know where the puddles might be forming. And they're going to be an indicator of probably one or two things. It's either a low spot in your infield, or you've got problems with lips that is not allowing the water to run off of that infield properly. You're getting almost like a little curb from that lip. And it's or a little dam, whatever you want to call it, and it stops the water from moving off of there. Or you got a combination of both. But the first thing you want to do is take the lip out, and then you can check again and see if the water is going to freely move off of there. You might find that you still need to add some soil back into those areas, and bring that back up to grade and solidify. Go ahead, Tom.
A real good thing to do in the wintertime, if you get some thawing, or you get a good rain event in there, take your phone out, take a picture of your infield. Get up in the stands, take a picture of it. You got a road map to where all your low spots are, where all your problem drainage areas are. So it's really good, little tool. Everybody's got a phone now, so
yeah. Or go out there with a big landscaping nail or a tarp stake or whatever, and just outline the puddle really deep so you can see it, and so then you'll know where you've got to work on it. Then once conditions become favorable to do that kind of thing, but that's like Tom says, that's the easiest way to do it, is to keep a record somehow of it or trace it out.
Picture.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So where else do we want to go? Yeah, edging. There's, I always tell this story, there's nothing that you can do to your field makes a more immediate aesthetic impact is edging the field. Anytime, you guys go to, I always tell these little jokes and stuff, you go in and, you go to the barber, you get a haircut, you always feel better walking out of that place. You look sharp, and get to Paul's stage, he may not be as happy as he used to be, but
what do you mean? Mine looks fresh all the time.
There's a couple different things with that too. It makes the field just look sharp, and more defined. It shows that you're paying attention to it. Plus, it also helps you identify if you have any lip problems. You know, you got that interface of the grass and the dirt. You know, a fresh edge will really show that differentiation between where your grass soil is and your turf soil. Those should be pretty smooth there. Those transitions. So it'll give you a head start on that. Let you know what you got to do with that.
And in the South, of course, you're forced to do it more frequently because, you know, the Bermuda grass or whatever type of grass that they've got down there on their particular fields, in more often than not, is much more aggressive than what we grow up here in the North. And bluegrass and ryegrass moves, you know, laterally much more slowly. You know, you're forced to, and the other thing is the more frequently you do it down south, you know, the less times that you have to go out and string it and everything because, you know, if you go out there, every 2 weeks and just hit it, you almost don't even have to string it.
The easier it is to do.
Yeah,
you know, so
exactly.
basically, I always like to string straight lines. You know, especially the first time you're doing it. The more often you do it, you know, you probably don't have to. I really like to do it. I mean, I've edged hundreds and hundreds of miles of fields, and I can do cutouts pretty good freehand, but straight lines, I always like to put the string down. It doesn't take long. The more often you do it, you know, you run that edger blade across it, and then you can just use a weed eater to trim it up. Basically, there's no cleanup. You know, it's a little bit of rake work or a backpack blower or something like that. It's really not much different than just mowing your grass, and you know, you get some grass clippings on there all the time anyway. But again, and I always say this, a little bit of maintenance on a periodic schedule makes it quick to do.
Yeah. Here in the North,
it's not such a huge job.
Yeah. Here in the North, you can probably get away with much. You don't have to go anywhere near as frequent as 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in Baltimore, we probably did it about 4 times a year, you know, and that was it. But
we would do it before every homestand.
Yeah. Yep.
And if I had like a 10-day homestand, I'd probably do the infield halfway through, and just a quick boom with the gas edger. And I mean, it would take us literally maybe 30, 45 minutes, knock out the field. It's just, of course, it's a different kind of maintenance.
You're and you're nuking that Bermuda to really move. So you know, like I said, you're forced to. You got to do it.
Yeah. But it just keeps everything sharp, and
absolutely.
You know, the better you have your field looking, the better the players are going to take care of it. You know, I've always thought that. You know, just
we always think that and hope that, but it's not always the case. But it's if they
didn't tear it up, we'd be out of a job.
And you know, you'd be surprised though, because you know, one of the comments I always used to get at the Little League fields was, you know, geez, you know, for the parents, you know, would come up and go, boy, it's really a shame that these kids just don't appreciate how good they've got it here. I said, you know, I hate to tell you this, but these kids really do know how nice these playing fields are and how good they've got it, because they'll go play at other people's fields, especially the traveling teams or the tournament teams, and they'll come back and tell me what was wrong with those fields because of what they've learned and learned to appreciate on these fields. So, you know, don't think that kids don't recognize a decent field.
Yeah.
So we've gotten the weeds out of the way. We've rolled the infield. We've taken care of the lips. We've edged it. Now, the last thing to get that infield skin ready is to hopefully you're using a top dressing, because it does make managing your field a lot easier. Most of you, if not all of you, probably are not taking your top dressing off the infield going into winter, and I can understand that. That's labor intensive, and you gotta have a place to put it. We do it up at the upper levels because of the strong winds and everything, and it'll blow it into your lips. So we're just doing it to prevent that kind of thing from happening, and also it makes it easier then to fix any low areas come springtime, because otherwise you'd have to move the top dressing out at that point. Well, if it's all gone, then we can just go ahead and add soil as we need to. But if you've got existing top dressing out there, we're just trying to maintain it at about no more than a 1/4 inch depth. So if you seem a little slight in there, you can add some. And usually, after winter, if I did leave my top dressing out there, like we did at the Little League complex, we would always put some fresh stuff on anyways, just to beef up the color and make it look good for opening weekend and so on and so forth. So, but that's the time to do it, and wait till as long as possible to put that on. That should be one of the last things before they start playing officially. And again, the reason behind that is because as long as that's sitting out there, it's open game for Mother Nature to move it by rain or by wind or however. So, you don't want to put it out there if you don't have to at any particular time. You have any comments on that, Tom?
No, I kind of believe that too. I like to take the top dressing off. If you haven't taken the top dressing off, make sure in the fall you put some kind of a barrier to keep it on the field, to keep it from going into the edges. Whether it's a piece of edging, an old hose,
straw wattles,
several different things, straw wattles,
all kinds of things. You can use.
There's all kinds of different ways to do it.
Silt fence. We covered that in last fall's checklist.
And I like to take it off. I like to start fresh over the year. Like you said, it makes it so much easier to work your dirt, to re-level it, because you don't want to get that top dressing down there
mixed in.
And mixed in, and because you're going to get areas where you've got a bigger volume of top dressing in there. It's going to be a loose area for you all summer long. So just easier to take it off. Anyway,
all right.
Another thing, Paul, we haven't really talked about is the irrigation system. Make sure that when you're starting it up north, I'm sure you blow it out and you got to restart it. Even in the south here, you probably haven't used your irrigation much over the winter time. So you want to make sure that you check all your quick couplers, make sure you haven't gotten any trash flown in there, blow those things out. Make sure you exercise the valves on your irrigation system, make sure heads aren't sticking because you haven't used it that much.
Yep. Adjust any arcs that you need to.
Yeah, I guarantee you if a head sticks, it's going to be pointing at the dirt. And, you're going to run it one night and you're going to come into a nightmare. So just check all those things out. Make sure the valves aren't sticking, the heads aren't sticking. So that's, even if you're, if you're overseeded or, dormant Bermuda grass still needs water. We don't want to let that soil dry out so much, because you do start getting warm. You need that moisture in your soil to let that Bermuda grass come up. Your grass will actually be less susceptible to cold injury if you've got proper moisture in your soil. So, irrigation, don't bypass that. Check it out.
It's one of the most important tools you've got out there on the ball field. So make sure that irrigation system's operating at its peak efficiency. Just like the infield skin, the warning track should be treated the same way. Remove your weeds, all right, and then get out there, regrade it, check to make sure you don't have lip issues, edge it as need be, make it look sharp, and where you need to add it to get it back up to grade, go ahead and do that. And don't let that be the only time during the year that you go out and drag that track. Again, you hear people say, well, "What do I got to do to keep weeds out of the track?" Well, very simple. Drag it. If you're dragging the infield, take a few minutes to make a couple passes around the perimeter of the field where you've got a warning track and get those dragged, whether it's by hand drag or by towing it with some kind of a utility vehicle. Either way, get it done because it'll do the job for you keeping weeds out of that. And speaking of weeds, it's a crabgrass season. In fact, Tom's probably already well into crabgrass season down in the south already.
Oh yeah.
But the middle portion of the country, when I say middle, I mean linearly. What would you say?
Transition zone.
Colorado. Yeah, people don't know what the transition zone is.
Well,
from Colorado from Colorado to Maryland. If you imagine a kind of a straight strip across that area, that's kind of the transition zone between northern grasses and southern grasses. But climate-wise, the soil temperatures are warming up as we move north this time of year. And once you start, if you get yourself a cheap little soil thermometer and measure down about 2 inches down into the soil, if you check that every afternoon, about 3 o'clock, as soon as you start to see soil temperatures reach 50 degrees 3 days in a row in the afternoon, that's your cue to get your crabgrass preventer down. Another way people will use it, at least up here in the north, is we look at forsythias. A lot of forsythia shrubs flower out at that temperature, and that's usually another way that you can use to say, okay, time to get my crabgrass preventer out. It's probably a different plant down in the south that they're going to use as an indicator. Tom, take it away.
Yeah, down in the south, we talked about transition. If you're overseeded, if you're not overseeded, you're going dormant. When crepe myrtles bloom, I'm not talking about budding out. When they start budding out, you're close. But when they bloom, it's full blown Bermuda season. It's game on for Bermuda. You can start aerifying it, pushing it. I always like to tell people, when it comes to pre-emergent, when it comes to fertilization, talk to your turfgrass professionals, the T&O guys, turf and ornamental guys, where you buy your fertilizer. They know what's working in that area that year. So utilize those people. They can give you a really good calendar, because just as you're moving north by 60, 80, 100 miles, it could be completely different, your window for controlling certain weeds. Really like to do, I started doing split applications where I'd put half down in the winter and then half down in the spring too, because it kind of gives you the late blooming weeds and taking care of those. But trust these guys, and that's their job, and they know what's working, what's not working. They know the timing of it. So you need to educate yourself on that.
Some other key things, Tom, that I should probably mention is that if you're looking to aerify in the spring, or overseed, I would hold off putting your pre-emergent down before the window, because if you aerify, let's say you put your crabgrass preventer down, and a month later you go in and you aerify, well, you've just pretty much negated that application you've put down, because anywhere where that aerifier penetrated, you've now got an open window for crabgrass to come up. Okay, because the way pre-emergent works is it sets up a barrier at the surface of your turf, and as soon as a crabgrass germinates and it tries to break through that barrier, it gets killed instantly. You start putting all these holes in there, and suddenly, hey, I got a place to go up, and they have a heyday.
And it's a little bit, it's a little bit different down here, Paul, because in the northern parts of the country, spring and the fall is when you get the most growth out of your grass.
Yeah.
The summertime, the bluegrasses and things like that kind of, don't grow as quickly. Well,
Correct.
Here it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
When it's hot out, that's the time to aerify down here, because that's when that Bermuda grass is shooting down the roots and really going. So really, summertime weeds here, you really don't have to worry about them. It's that spring and fall. You want to get the your pre-emergent down, because most of the weeds here, will come in the wintertime, the broadleaf weeds in the wintertime,
Yep.
and then the grassy weeds in the early spring. If you can get that pre-emergent down to knock those things back at that time, summertime, you should be cruising and growing good grass.
So the second thing that I was going to say was that, if you put down grass seed and you've got pre-emergent down for grassy weeds, guess what? You're not going to see anything come up because it'll kill it. Yeah, it's a grass and it'll kill it. But even with broadleaf pre-emergent, that can also affect grass from germinating as well.
Yeah.
This is why seeding is so much more important in the late half or the late portion of summer, early fall, because you don't have to make those chemical applications, except Tom does, of course, because he's kind of in a different situation than we are up here in the north. But that's where the best seeding time is. And in fact, I always used to say that my best fields at the Little League fields were always going into fall ball, because we would spend the last week or two of July and all of August getting the fields ready for fall ball, and that included aerification and overseeding. And by the time those kids got out onto the field for fall ball, I mean, they were lush and thick with grass from all the work we did. They were always in better shape then than they actually were for opening day in April.
And they are here too, generally. Unless you're overseeded, and it just really depends on your maintenance budget, how much play you get. You can't. If you're in a recreational deal, your fields are overplayed and undermaintained, and that's no knock on any of the guys taking care of it. It's just that you don't have the manpower that we had at our disposal when the team goes out of town. And that's changing a lot now because they got extra events and stuff. But you can at least give the field a little bit of rest. You're not playing 15 games a day in the summertime. 7 days, 28 days in a row. It's just a different kind of wear. So one thing I always tell people is, Paul and I have given a lot of seminars and stuff, and everybody says, well, I can't do this, and I can't do this, and I can't do this. And that's just the most defeatist attitude you could ever have. Because don't worry about what you can't do, because you can't do it. Worry about what you can do. Look at your field and say, what can I do to this field? What are the things that I can do to make this field better? And don't worry about what you can't do.
Just like what you hear on this podcast. If you can take away 3 or 4 things from this podcast that you can do to help your field, you're 3 or 4 steps farther beyond than what you were before. And, over time, you might be able to find other things that you can do that you'd never thought of doing, or that you never thought would make such a big impact on your fields. We don't expect you to take every piece of information we give you and take it home and do it. If you do, great. I mean, our Little League complex, I had a 3-man crew there all the time. And so we were able to keep those fields at really an upper level. Of course, part of it's because I was there telling them what they should do until they learned it. And once they learned it, they were good. But always strive to make things better, even if it's just 1 or 2 things. If you go to a local seminar or something like that about groundskeeping, ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question.
If you don't know the answer,
because I guarantee you, most other people have the same problems, and they might just be too afraid to ask the questions. We love it when people ask questions, because we love to pour our brains out, because let's face it, pretty soon those brains will be empty. Got to use it while we can.
I've been accused of that before.
Hey, Tom, so mowing height. What do you suggest for mowing height for recreational fields down in the south?
I like recreational fields. I think 1 inch on warm season grass. I think 1 inch. No more than 1.25 inches. I see people mowing Bermuda grass 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, and it just really gets thinner. You get too much of a stem on it and a little bit of leaf.
Leggy.
The tighter, the shorter you can keep it, the tighter it's going to be. Now, that comes with a caveat too, because the shorter you keep it, the more frequently you have to mow it. There's a 1/3 rule. It applies to any turf grass. Excuse me. You don't want to mow any more than 1/3 of the height of your grass off at a time. So the shorter you cut your grass, the more frequently you need to mow it. You keep Bermuda grass at about an inch and a quarter, you could probably get away with 2 to 3 times a week. You start getting down into below an inch, 7/8, down to 9/16 or something like that, you better be mowing at least 3-4 times a week. Otherwise you're going to start scalping it.
And of course, if you really want to keep it nice and thick, verticut.
Yeah, verticut, because
Messy
Bermuda grass,
job, but what it does for the grass is phenomenal.
Oh yeah, because you're cutting all those runners that you see going across. You're cutting them, and once you cut them, they start sprouting from both ends. So you got more plants on there.
Yeah. And up here in the north, I would say it depends on if it's an irrigated field or not. If it's an irrigated field, I'd go 1.25 inches for bluegrass or ryegrass, and you could. Today's bluegrasses, they're way better than they were when I was in professional ball in the 80s and 90s. You could probably easily go 1 inch, if you've got the time to do it. You could keep it down on an inch and really have a nice, fast field. If it's unirrigated, I would say, 1.5 to 2 inches, just to make sure that you keep that grass as long as you can. Tom, you got any other wisdom before we call it a game?
I think we've covered a lot of things here. Definitely, we didn't cover everything. It's hard to cover everything. We try to give these people the important points. One thing, I get on my soapbox every once in a while, and the one thing I'll leave these people with, all the people that do watch this, if you prepare your field like your son or daughter is going to play on that field that day, you can't go wrong. Right. It's a very rewarding profession. You get to beat Mother Nature every once in a while. Then she'll come back and slap you pretty good. But it's really, you're at the ballpark every day. You're bringing joy to kids. Getting them physical education. Teaching them life lessons. So really, it's just really enjoyable to do. I really love to be able to, tell people the problems and the mistakes that I've made, and just try to make it easier on them. I really, really enjoy doing these things. I hope the people that listen to it get some valuable content out of it. And Paul, thanks you for having me on, and hope to be on in the future.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying, and I've said that they've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again because it's important. I spent 15 years in Major League Baseball, and then when I left there, took a year or two off from groundskeeping, and then got involved with the Little League, and did that for almost 15 years. And I can tell you that I got more satisfaction out of doing that than I did working in Major League Baseball. And the reason is because those kids and those parents never expect it. The ball players, they expect that it better be perfect all the time. But to see the faces of the parents as they come in and go, holy cow, my kid's going to play on this field? And to hear the players talk about it and see the great plays that go on. And, I've had kids come back from playing there that went on to play in high school and college, and I've asked them, what was the best field you played on? Especially, it blows my mind when I ask some of these guys who went to college, and I say, hey, what was the best field that you ever played on? And then, you want to know the truth? I go, yeah, I want to know the truth. And I go, this field right here, and they'd be pointing to what we called our senior field, which was for the field for 13 through 18-year-olds. And in a way, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But at the same time, I was saying to myself, that's a sad comment on
Yeah.
how schools and colleges are not taking care of their athletic field for their players. Recreation I can understand, but high schools and colleges, I mean, come on. I can understand if you don't have a maintenance guy, then coach, take some initiative, take some pride, teach these kids how to work a field. It's not like when I was a kid and there was nowhere I could go to learn this stuff. The internet is full of education. Some of it's mine, but it's full of education, and it's just a couple keystrokes, and you've got all the information in the world. Now, sometimes you might have to look and see which one you might agree with more, because there's no one way to do a lot of these things. A lot of these things, you can do them several different ways and reach the same ending. But that's the beauty of now. I mean, I was hungry when I was a kid going into groundskeeping, looking for information. There was nothing out there in the early, mid-'80s, or even when Tom started back when they were inventing the wheel. There was nothing there. So the young kids of today, and the other thing, these kids that are playing youth sports, especially as they're getting into high school, start to talk to them and let them know that this is a profession you could do if because a lot of these kids are never going to go farther than that, even though they really want to stay involved in sports. One of the problems our profession has is getting these kids to know that this is a job that it can take you places.
You can make a living.
My son went on to he's done baseball. He did our little league. He worked for the Orioles for a while. He's done golf, and now he's working for a parks department here in southern Wisconsin. So they just need to be exposed, because you're not going to get a guidance counselor at high school to say, "Oh, did you ever think about being a groundskeeper?" That's just not going to happen. Sports fields managers, by the way, is what I should have said. But it's a great profession. For me, it was a ton of fun, and I got to act like a kid for a long time.
Me too.
But
met some
work
amazing
outside.
people along the way.
I got to work alongside Cal Ripken for 15 years of his career. And lots of other big names, Fred Lynn, Brady Anderson, you name it. There's tons of big names that Tom and I have worked with, and some people it's pretty exciting. But just think about that and kind of talk to the kids about that and let them know if they don't know what they're doing and they want to stay involved in sports, let them know that this is a profession that they could get into. And if
it's not limited to baseball, Paul. Soccer's
that's right.
becoming huge.
Soccer,
Cricket's
football,
becoming
you name
huge.
it. I mean, there's all kinds of sports.
I mean, it's
or you work at a parks department or a school where you've got to deal with all those sports. We were strictly
landscape and
baseball,
things like that.
Well,
too.
Tom did some football.
Yeah.
So,
anyways,
it's
a cool.
Tom, appreciate you having on this month, and we'll be seeing you again soon, I'm sure, and we'll take it from there and plan on the next episode.
Okay, thank you so much.
And that about wraps it up for this episode of The Inside Edge, brought to you by DuraEdge. Whether you're maintaining a local recreational ball field or something bigger, we're here to help you on your journey to create better playing, safer, and easier to maintain ball fields. To watch past episodes, you can find them on your favorite podcast sites like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, YouTube, and others. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, leave a comment or send us an email at insideedge@duraedge.com. Be sure to follow @DuraEdge Products on social media for more tips and insights. And with that, I bid you adieu. We'll see you on our next episode.